Hello and welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates 2020 on WCMU TV. I'm David Nicholas, and we are speaking with our guests this year virtually, joined this time by Celia Young Wenkel. She is the Democratic candidate for Michigan's 97th House District. Congratulations on the win in August, and as our first moment or two, if you could give us a little bit of background about you, your background, and also the experience you bring to the campaign.
Well, I'm a retired Children's Protective Services worker, and I've lived and worked in the 90s. I worked in the 97th district for my whole career. I've lived in the 97th district for most of my adult life. I have a master's degree in social work. My experience with one of the largest agencies in state government, I think, makes me qualified to be a candidate. I don't have a lot of political experience, but I did run last cycle. I won a tough primary by 10 votes, and now I have won my primary again this cycle, and I'm ready to go.
As you were doing that campaigning leading up to August and in the days and weeks since then, now as we head towards November, what have the voters been telling you, and what do you as candidate identify as the key issues in this campaign?
Well, for me, one of the, and I feel like a lot of my voters agree that one of the biggest issues is our public school system. And I ran on that last cycle as well, but our public school system versus our nonprofit public school system versus the corporate public school system. I was at a meeting with Representative Wentworth in November last year, and he explained to us, it was the Democratic Gladwin County Party, and he said that all of our schools in Michigan are public schools. And I disagree with that stance. Our public schools are the schools that are for free for our kids and don't make any kind of corporate profit for other people. I feel like when we put the profit motive into our education, our students are the ones who get ripped off. Representative Wentworth at one time told me that he feels that, well, we were at a meeting with the Michigan Education Association retired teachers, and he said that parents and families should get the money that is allotted per student, and they should be able to take that money and use it on whatever school that they feel is best for their child. Well, to me, that's just another way of saying voucher system. And I'm opposed to the voucher system. I'm opposed to any kind of profit motive in our public school system. So that's my number one priority. My number two priority is the Medicaid expansion. And here we are again, 2 years later. The Medicaid expansion is a part of the Affordable Care Act that was left up to the states. Michigan chose to expand our Medicaid to low-income individuals versus just the Medicaid, which is for very low-income individuals. And so now, of course, as we all know, the Trump administration is going to court, and it's one of the first things on the agenda of the Supreme Court this session is to end the Affordable Care Act. If I go to Lansing, I will fight to, if we should lose the Affordable Care Act, I will fight to maintain some kind of way to keep the Medicaid expansion, which would if we lose in the court, that would be up to the states to try and fight for. The other part of my healthcare plan is that we live in a rural district, and I think it was sometime in the fall, the Detroit Free Press did an article on how the populations in the rural counties are elderly or older than in the more urban counties. And so because of that, our rural counties have a much higher caseload of those with diabetes. And so when I get sent to Lansing, Colorado recently enacted legislation where they put $100 cap on insulin per individual per month. And I would fight in our legislature to pass similar legislation for Michigan and in the 97th district, where we are definitely rural, where we do have an older population, and we do have a significant number of cases of diabetes. And the thing about providing insulin at a reasonable cost is that not only do we save lives but we also save money, because when people get the right amount of insulin, then they don't have as many negative results from their diabetes. I mean, we save money on stroke care and hospitalizations and kidney disease and all the rest of it when we're helping people with diabetes. So those are two of my priorities. And my final priority would be to the criminal justice reform. When I was working for the state of Michigan, for the Department of Health and Human Services, that was about the time that they decided to close down all the mental hospitals. And so what has happened since then is that instead of having adequate treatment for individuals who are suffering from mental health, they end up in our criminal justice system, and then they end up in prison. And one of the interesting things about the cost of prison is that 3 of my children attended the University of Michigan, and the tuition at the University of Michigan, including room and board and regular tuition, is around a little more than $37,000 a year. The cost to keep a prisoner in Jackson is about $38,000 a year. So the way I see it is keeping people who don't belong in our prison should be a priority. Providing adequate mental health treatment, working with people with substance abuse issues. Substance abuse should not be treated as a crime. It should be treated as an illness. Addiction is an illness, and substance abuse is an illness. And we need to get those folks out of our prison system and save that amount of money. So between getting people with mental illness and people with substance abuse out of our prison system, we could save, a lot of money in a year. Also, one of the things when we look at criminal justice reform is ending the school to prison pipeline. Many kids end up getting kicked out of school, and because they can't behave in a school situation, they end up becoming part of our criminal justice system. And there has to be a better way. When you consider that we could pay for them to go to college for the same amount to send them to prison, we need to work on that. And I would fight to end mandatory minimums. And those would be the kinds of things that I would look at to end or to work on criminal justice reform. In the 97th district, as I said, I was a Children's Protective Services worker for 22 years, and I can't tell you how many times I relied on law enforcement in our district to accompany me in situations where my life was at risk. And so I appreciate our law enforcement. And when we talk about defunding the police, in the 97th district, we don't really have the kind of services to take away the money from our police. And so I would, in fact, I would ask for more money to fund our police in the 97th district. So those are my priorities. So
we have about a minute and a half left, and I do want to leave time for a final message to the voters, but a little bit more detail on addressing the public schools and the specific policies when it comes to the funding question. You talked about the choices between the charter schools, school choice, the public school system. How specifically would you want to strengthen that or enforce what the policies that we currently have on the books?
The current cost per pupil is about $8,200. And what I would do is, particularly the online schools, which is a huge issue. I mean, we have the Republicans telling us how inadequate online schools are compared to public schools. At the same time, they're funding the online public schools at the same rate that they're funding the brick and mortar public schools. Even Rick Snyder was opposed to, wanted to take some of the money out of the public schools, out of the online charter schools, and bring it back to our traditional public schools. And I would fight for that when I get sent to the legislature, is to bring some of that money from the online charter schools back to our public schools, our traditional public schools. So,
if there was a final message that you could leave with the voters as they get set to go to the polls in our last half minute, what would that message be?
Please vote. And I think the most important message is that I am someone who has spent my whole career fighting for children and families in crisis in the 97th district. And the 97th district is currently experiencing an unprecedented crisis between the pandemic, our 500-year flood, and the resulting dam failures. We still have bridges out in Aranet County and Gladwin County, major thoroughfares, and send me to Lansing, and I will fight for the citizens of the 97th district, just like I always have. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you speaking with us, and to the voters in District 97. Stay safe the rest of the way. Good luck with the rest of the campaign, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have been speaking with Celia Young Wenkel, the Democratic candidate in the race for Michigan's 97th State House District. And a reminder that under Michigan law, all qualifying party candidates in these races were invited to participate in our series. I'm David Nicholas on behalf of all of us here. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again. And please remember to get out and exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd.